Thank you for visiting Past the Wire TV, the YouTube channel of PastTheWire.com.
Read the best of the best and hope for the best.
Vekoma broke well on the outside, and
But you don't expect to get speed like this.
inside. Vekoma continues to battle on down the rail. It is Vekoma who's going to win the Met Mile.
Everybody, and welcome to Past the Wire TV and our Breeders' Cup Win and You're In recap. This week we had the Whitney Stakes from Saratoga. Life is Good won it. Was it impressive? Was it what you expected? Was it what we expected? How does it shape up for the Breeders' Cup Classic later this year in November at Keeneland? We've got all of that and more with some interesting takes that you might not expect. Before we get to that, courtesy of our boots on the ground, Jim Gazelle, we'll make it as if you were there yourself. So sit back, enjoy the show, and we'll get to Life is Good in a minute.
Are going to avenge what happened in the last race. I really like the Four Horse Nation's Pride. They fired Dettori. They're flying William Buick over to ride this horse.
That should, keep him a little bit more honest. I think it comes down to Nation's Pride and Stone Age like you.
Watch Saratoga today on Past the Wire TV with Dawn Lupel and Jonathan Stettin. Every Saturday morning of the meet, horses to play and to play against, vulnerable favorites, track trends, winning angles, the scope, and more. Watch, subscribe, ride with us. Nobody does it better.
Joe, don't pick the flowers.
Come on, E-Rod. E-Rod, bring this home.
Life is Good. Traction stride coming outside. This is right off for the early lead. Life is Good. Clears the field. And is quickly in front field. Going into the clubhouse turn. In front by almost 3. This fall at Keeneland.
JC, just box him in, box him in.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Past the Wire TV's Breeders' Cup Win and You're In Domestic Challenge Series. We've got a good recap of the Whitney, Life is Good. Michael Wilson, who's quite familiar with Life is Good. I'm a little familiar with Life is Good myself. We've got some interesting takes. Michael from up there at Saratoga, me from far away in the heat of Southwest Florida. How are you, sir?
Oh, I'm fantastic, and I want to apologize. I know everybody really liked the background last week, but
we will get back to that.
It is hot today. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see which is hotter, South Florida or Saratoga, because every one of us is out of the sales inspecting yearling sweating. So I decided to record this from inside now that all the yearling work is done.
You guys don't know heat until you've been here in the tropics with that sun so close in the sky you could actually reach up and touch it.
Yeah.
So it gets pretty hot. You ready for the sales? You ready for the sales?
Oh yeah, no. We've looked at everything. We've done second and third looks. We have an interesting process. We go through all the horses once, and Dominique got that knocked out within a day, kind of like a day and a half. Saw everything on the sales grounds, and then we did our second looks together. And then we did our final looks, and so finalized our list as of 10 a.m. this morning. And then, just starting to work away and see what makes sense for certain people. So it should be an exciting sale. Last year, I think there was a much more pedigree than physical in terms of, horses that really kind of deserved the purchase prices that they probably went for. Last year, I think I only had 12 horses on my short list that really made sense out of the 200 catalog. So this year we have, I believe, 35. So it just goes to show there's a lot more quality that was brought up to this sale this year, both with pedigree and with physical athletes.
Yeah, I love the sales. I think it's one of the most exciting times up there at Saratoga. I really do. But we're here to talk about something else today.
Yes.
Life is Good. Punched his ticket to the Breeders' Cup Classic. No surprise there, I think. I'm going to start with this question for you. Can the Life is Good, or does the Life is Good we saw on Saturday beat Flightline?
I think yes. I mean, I think Life is Good. Life is Good has always been a very interesting horse, and I'll rewind right away on this. I remember I was at Santa Anita, maybe it was 4, so it was at least 2 years ago, and this horse walks on the racetrack, this dark bay with not too many markings, and he's just gorgeous. And I asked the rider, I said, who is this horse? He kind of chuckles and he says, Life is Good. And I'm like, yeah, life's great. I mean, we're in LA. It's fantastic. I said, but what's the horse's name? And he says, no, the horse's name is Life is Good. I said, holy smokes, this is, a horse to keep tabs on. So obviously with the work we do, Dominique and myself looking at horse at sales, I said, you need to get your butt down here to the racetrack. Something just walked on the track that's like equine perfection. And he'd never run before. So he'd walked on the racetrack and just had this presence and physique that was just a standout, even though he doesn't have very flashy markings. And then when he galloped, then you really saw, holy, he's the real package. He's the real deal. So I remember early on, Dominique and I saw him, training and breezing at Santa Anita. And then you saw his debut race. And quickly we texted a couple of people and said, if this horse doesn't win the Triple Crown, then, there's something wrong. So, obviously he didn't make it to the Derby, but he's always been an exceptional horse.
I know that as well. The day he made his debut, I got a phone call early that morning from somebody who I'm going to leave nameless for this show. Not important, but it's somebody who would really know. And they said something to the effect of, listen, I know you don't like to bet, heavy favorites, so I'm not going to tell you to bet on this horse, although you certainly could. But I will tell you this, whatever you do, if you're betting Del Mar that race today, do not bet against this horse under any circumstance. And it was Life is Good. And I knew he was very, very, very well thought of. And I don't think he's ever really disappointed. You know, a lot of people when he lugged out questioned it as a 2-year-old before he went to Todd's barn when he was still in Bob's barn. I was never really that worried about it. You know, his race over in the desert didn't really knock me off him. I thought the race Saturday at first watch, and this is why I always like to watch a race 2 or 3 times, and especially when there's no adrenaline. Because first time I watched the race, I thought it was a little bit more workmanlike than it should have been against those type of horses. And that was when I watched it live. But then when I went back and watched it again, I had a different take. And then when I watched it the second replay, so the third time, I kind of agreed with my second take. And I think he really won a lot easier than it looked. And I think to his defense, the track up there, as you know, you're up there, is playing a little bit heavy and a little tiring, especially towards the inside, I'm told. And he, you know, yeah, he was coming off a layoff. He had every right to show a little, you know, wear and tear, going 1 1/8 off that layoff. But if you watch, once he kind of put Happy Saver away for the final time, that last 16th of a mile, and got clear, he really started to kind of gallop out again and really kind of find himself again. And he had a lot more in the tank than I originally thought. And it looked to me on that track like the perfect race to go forward off of and really build off. And I will throw something interesting out there. I think he's absolutely a contender in the Classic. And I think he's one of the horses to beat, and on his best day can give Flightline a fight and a half and maybe even beat him. But I do think if for some reason, and I don't know that they are, complete speculation, but I think if they decided to cut back in the mile, he's a lay down almost.
No, I don't think anybody touches the horse at a mile. I think
I think he's a lay down in the mile, you know.
Yeah, he's such an interesting horse, and I think to me, when I looked at him in the paddock, he looked great. I saw him schooling a couple days before. You know, we had some people up here with us, and I said, you know, it was Jim. Jim and I were at Saratoga one morning just having breakfast, and we're walking out, and I said that's Life is Good right there. And he looked phenomenal in the paddock. But if he was vulnerable, it was on Saturday. And you know, I looked at Olympiad in the paddock. I looked at Hot Rod Charlie. I thought Hot Rod Charlie looked fantastic. And I said, today could be the day, coming off the layoff, that Life is Good is vulnerable in this spot. And so to see him do what he did and just destroy the field without even, you know, it wasn't even a contest.
Over a track that really doesn't play to his kind of horse.
Exactly. And so to see that was really just kind of, okay, now you've cemented yourself. You're the #1 horse on dirt going 2 turns in the United States. You know, I understand all the stuff about Flightline. And this is the thing with Flightline that worries me at times, which I don't think you see with Life is Good. Flightline's races are extremely spaced out. So there's obviously things that he deals with that they have to space him out so much in between starts. So who knows if Flightline is to go and win the Pacific Classic, which, you know, Mandela's horse the other day was pretty impressive in the race when they beat Country Grammar. But if Flightline does make that step forward, does stretch out, does win, there's a big question mark of, can he actually get in the starting gate of the Breeders' Cup Classic, to me? Because look how many times he runs and then he disappears and you don't see him.
I've been saying that for a year now since we first saw him. The horse obviously has trouble getting to the races. Credit to John Sadler. He's managed him well. He's got him there. And when he's brought him over, he's gotten him as good as you can get him. I can't imagine he can be much better than what he's shown us on.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Getting back to what I said about watching replays, you know, I went back after the Whitney replay that I watched 3 times, and I watched Flightline's Met Mile again when it's completely digested and all the adrenaline and emotion is out of it, and really just watched it from a student perspective.
Right.
I wasn't as impressed as I was when I watched it originally and when I first saw it. Besides, and I know this is an unpopular opinion and we're going to get a lot of flack for it, and I don't mind that, and I'll certainly get flack and have egg on my face if he gallops in the Pacific Classic and the Breeders' Cup Classic. But hey, horses humble everybody. But I see a vulnerability at 1.25 miles. I see a horse that's obviously got soundness issues. I don't know what they are. I've heard rumors that it's his feet. He's got, you know, ouchie or feet. I don't know that that's true or not. They're not publicizing what it is that keeps him from running more often. But you know, it's tough for me to really throw my arms around a horse like that. Yes, he is, you know, somewhat brilliant when he brings his A game, you know, but, you know, to assume he's good enough to go that 1.25 miles around 2 turns against, you know, better competition at that distance than he's shown so far is a bit of an assumption, whether people want to admit it or not. And that's true even if they wind up being right. And he is all that. You know, you could wind up being right and it'd still be an assumption at the time. So
I think
I'm anxious to see it. I'm anxious to see it.
Yeah, he's an incredible horse. I mean, you can't take anything away from him. I mean, he's an incredible horse.
Agreed.
But so is Life is Good. And I think people might not, you know, when you talk about the two, and we've had this discussion because we're doing matings for mares for clients right now. Flightline's not on my list to breed to. Life is Good is.
I wouldn't blame you for that. Right?
And I'm not trying to knock him. I think he's going to be a good stallion. He's the son of Tappet out of an Indian Charlie mare. It's a very interesting breeding. It's something.
Flightline a Tappet?
Flightline's a Tappet, yeah, out of an Indian Charlie mare. So I mean, that's probably why they have the thought process with him that he can get the 2 turns, you know, because he is by Tappet and Indian Charlie on the bottom side, and that kind of adds a little bit more speed to him. Right. But I like horses that can kind of really continue to knock around in their division. So I think if the Classic shapes up where you have them both in there, it's a monstrous race. Obviously, we've talked about some of these 3-year-olds coming out that are obviously they're progressing in the right direction as well. So it's a phenomenal group of 1.25 mile horses. I think Life is Good is more the standout. Now, if you ask me who I was afraid of, let's say everything with this Kiss a Lot that we talked about the other day works out where he goes, you know, Smarty Jones, Penn Derby, and heck, you know, Breeders' Cup Classic, I would be terrified of Life is Good. I would not be as fearful of Flightline.
Interesting. That's a very interesting statement. Let me tell you something else that really would sway me to favor Life is Good over Flightline right now. Okay. Right. And you know, Pacific Classic hasn't been run yet. We don't know what he's going to do, whether he's going to win or what he's going to have to do to win, if he even makes the gate, which he should, and let's hope he does. But here's something I saw yesterday, or Saturday rather, from Life is Good that we haven't seen from Flightline yet. He overcame a little adversity in the Met Mile with the break, okay? But a little adversity for a good horse is not really all that from what he had to do. Life is Good on Saturday had to fight a little bit, had to show some guts, you know what I mean? He was tired, horses came at him, Irad had to ask him, and he responded. He responded to a fight. And you know, I always like to use boxing as a parallel with racehorses, and it might not be the best one, but you know, you can be a great fighter and all of a sudden you get hit and you're not great no more. We've all heard the you know, glass jaw saying.
Everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth, right? That's Mike Tyson.
And it's the truth. You know what I mean? If you've ever been hit in the nose and had your nose broke or your jaw broke, it's a game changer. You know, there's not a lot of guys that can respond to that and fight through that and keep coming and keep punching. And that's something I look for in a racehorse, especially at the grade 1 level. You know, you are an expert at what you do, bloodstock, you know, spotting horses. If I was a bloodstock agent, one of the things that would be very high on my list and looking at horses to buy, because I don't think this is something you can know before they run, But
Right.
when I see a horse that's got grit, that wants to fight, that's not going to back down, I would rate that very, very high in my book. There's a big difference to me between a speed horse who can, go to the lead by himself, shake loose, get brave, unchallenged, and go wire to wire, than a horse who can do that. Somebody come up, challenge him, look him in the eye, head and head, he puts him away, still goes on, holds off that closer. That's that heart that, you don't see. Even though Life is Good won somewhat easy, he showed that, hey, if somebody is going to come up to me and fight, I'll dig in and fight,
Yeah, and no, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, it is something that we do look for, and something that I look for in younger horses, whether it's yearlings. So there's a filly in this sale. Heck, I'll throw it out there. She's a 4-point sales. She is a practical joke filly who's an absolute monster. I can't remember her hip number off the top of her head. And when I talk to them, she's got kind of this little anger about her. She's a little bit feisty. And when you talk to the consignor, they say, oh, she's a man eater. And those horses, fillies, when you look at a racehorse and you look at a yearling or something at a public auction, you're not just looking at the physique. You're also looking at, and I've noticed this with every grade 1 winner I've ever worked with, presence, toughness. There is something different when a good horse walks out and they know they're good. It's very different from a good horse who just kind of, so we do look for it in younger horses. It's hugely important to me when it comes to matings and breedings. So this is going to be hugely unpopular, but I've never, ever liked Fusaichi Pegasus. I thought it was a great horse, but when somebody looked at him, Fupeg didn't show up. And it was very interesting talking with the guys when he went to the shed. I said, what's he like to deal with? And they say, well, he's a big showboat, but if you lay into him and discipline him, he sulks. I said, what's Giant's Causeway like? And they said, he's tough as nails. You could hit him with a truck and he'd get back up and he'd fight. And obviously you see what happened in their stud career. Same thing I remember when people asked me and they said, I want to breed a Verrazano. I said, that horse would be a flop. They said, why do you think Verrazano would be a flop? I said, he's got no guts. So a lot of times what you will see of these successful stallions, they were tough racehorses, and that mental toughness gets passed on to their offspring. So that's a huge thing in the selection process that we look for, because that is the differentiator. There are so many talented horses out there, just as there are so many talented human athletes. But the ones who make it to the top level are the ones that are tough and the ones that want to work hard for what they want. And so, yeah, I agree. We've talked about it with maidens, John. We talked in a previous show of a maiden that goes wire to wire first time out is usually a horse you want to pick against once they hit stakes horses. Because some of those horses are the first ones to fold because they've never seen anything competitive that's looked them in the eye and pushed them a little bit. So I agree. I saw the horse run at Life is Good. I said, now's the time when this horse folds. If he does, he didn't. He found another gear and he kicked clear. He was tired. I mean, mile and an eighth first time off a layoff is not easy. It is tough. So it showed a lot for that horse.
I agree. So I think we're in agreement that he's a major contender. And, in my book, probably at this point, the top contender for the Breeders' Cup Classic with an awfully attractive backup plan, because we're also in agreement that if for any reason they decide, you know what, the mile looks like, and it shows the talent of the horse and how much you and I think of him when we say the Breeders' Cup Mile is like the low-hanging fruit for him come November in Lexington. There's not many horses you'd say that about. I remember years ago, like Dan was running, I forget which Breeders' Cup race he was running in, and that's back when we had synthetic, and I'm like, doesn't matter. You can run him anywhere from the sprint on the dirt to the classic on synthetic, to the turf on grass. And he's a contender wherever you put him. There's not many horses like that. Life is Good, I would say, is more than a contender. I think he's the horse to beat right now for the classic, and I think he would lay over the field in the mile.
I agree. And, it's interesting as we
might not get disgraced in the sprint, although I wouldn't want to run down Japanese Warrior, but it might not be disgraced in.
No, I think, if you put him on grass, it might be a different situation. But I would agree. I think, let's say you put the two horses together, right? Let's say you put Flightline versus Life is Good. and you put him in the sprint, I think Flightline might have an edge. But I think Life is Good's phenomenal in that race. I think you go to the mile, you say Life is Good, Flightline in the mile, it's still close. I think when you draw away in the Breeders' Cup Classic, Flightline takes a jump, Life is Good takes a jump forward and makes it less competitive than it would be at the shorter distances.
Well, we're on the same page, and there you have it. We probably have an unpopular opinion here because Flightline certainly has a bigger bandwagon than Life is Good. He's carrying a lot more weight of the public, but you and I are both in agreement that Life is Good is probably the better horse and probably the horse to beat in the Classic, and is definitely the one that we would both line up to breed to prior to Flightline. So that's an interesting take. I don't think it's going to be popular. Not that that really matters. I've had unpopular opinions before.
Yeah. I mean, the other way you could look at it, the other way you can look at it is, why are they keeping Flightline on the West Coast? I understand he's there. I understand he's with John. I think
they did bring him. They did bring him to Belmont. In all fairness.
I think they're trying to avoid Life is Good. I think they're smart enough to say, you know what? Let's leave them apart and then see where we end up. So that's just my thought process. I could be wrong. Terry Finley could see me tonight at the sales and say, why would you say that about the horse? We're not dodging him, but I think I would think logically, if the horse is sound and on his game and training as good as they say he is, that first time 2 turns, 1.1 1/8 at Saratoga in the Whitney would have been a better spot than 1.25 miles in the Pacific Classic, even with the Classic in mind. But, first time 2 turns, 1.25 miles, I'd go 1.1 1/8 first if it was me. So maybe there's something to that. 100%, because what people don't always give California credit for, Del Mar is a tiring surface. And I honestly think being here at Saratoga and seeing this track and being at Del Mar last year and seeing that track, I think it's more tiring in California than it is at Saratoga at the moment. So it's deep here, but it's got enough bounce to it that horses can still go on the lead and keep kicking. Del Mar is a track that we're starting to see some more closers come out of the woodworks because it's extremely tiring. There's a lot of sand in the Del Mar track.
Right. Interesting. I'll close with this. I think we should touch base on it. IRAD took a lot of flack, including some from Richard Migliori on the Fox show that I didn't see. I only read about it. About his ride on Life is Good in the Whitney. And the stewards took a little bit of flack for not blinking the number. My take was, I didn't really fault IRAD for his ride at all. And I don't think that the stewards really needed to blink that horse or put an inquiry up. And I think a lot of people just wanted to see them look at it. But my take on it from the steward perspective was, by rule, there was not going to be a disqualification, because it was obvious to me once Happy Saver ran second that whether IRAD did anything or not, by rule, he didn't cost him a placing. He ran second. He was never going to win. So had he run third, yes, you look at it, but he didn't run third. He ran second. So there was really nothing to look at. If anything, it was something you may want to talk to IRAD about, directly, but there was no reason to blink it. And if you did so, you would just be doing it to satisfy the public, because there was no rule violation once Happy Saver runs second. And I don't think you put up an inquiry just to satisfy people. I think that's a little deceptive and misleading when you get down to it. That's just my opinion. I understand the other side of it. People want to see that they looked at it. So that's really just preference. But to me, IRAD didn't cross the line of race riding. I mean, he was a little aggressive. Some people say he didn't have to be. He had the race won. I wasn't so sure at that point watching the race that he had it won. So if I wasn't so sure, he might not have been sure. I really didn't fault him. I mean, it was an aggressive ride. He did move in. He did move out. What a lot of people don't realize is Life is Good does have a tendency to move in and out in the stretch anyway. He did look like it was intentional on the head-on moving in to, maybe make it tight for Happy Saver. Johnny snatched up and right away went out, but did not claim foul. They were both Pletcher horses. Whether that plays into it or not, you might have more insight than me, but I think that there was a lot more made of it than really needed to be. That was my take. What was yours?
I personally don't. I mean, I don't think they were going to beat it. Let's say the horse gets beat ahead, then I think it's something that you definitely need to look at. Some people might say, well, that's not how it should be. It's very interesting in our sport, and I think it's a bias that people need to look at, because people want to be very biased about guys like Irad, and they want to be extremely polarizing, and they want to be extremely polarizing about Baffer. And there's certain situations in our sport where you just have to look at it from an unbiased opinion. I tend, the best I can, to look at everything without a bias, to see what's valid, what's not. And I feel when it comes to Irad, everybody's so sick of him winning. And yes, has he done some rough riding every now and again, and maybe crossed the line with some race riding every now and again. But people, I think it's more that people just want to see him get taken down and lose versus validity behind comments that are made and bandwagon piling on of suspend him, put him on, do whatever. He does a great job. He's a very good rider. The reason why he wins is because he is an aggressive rider. And, if you look at it, and I'm a fan of Formula One racing, there's a driver called Max Verstappen, who is a very aggressive driver. He's winning. He's not crossing the line. He's not fouling people in races, but he intimidates them. And that's part of athletics, whether anybody wants to like it or not. I think when they did the Chicago Bulls The Last Dance on Netflix, everybody said, well, Michael Jordan's an asshole. Well, Michael Jordan on a court is very different than Michael Jordan in real life. And when you're an athlete and you're competing, your job is to compete and win, okay? You don't play dirty, but intimidation is a big thing in sports to try and win. If you can intimidate and get into somebody's head and break them mentally, you do it. That's what you do in sports. So if you don't like it, that's probably why you don't play the game. But the game is in sports, your job is to win when you're on the court. You don't cheat, you don't cross the line, you don't break the rules. But you do everything you can within the rules to intimidate your opponent and try and win a game. That's just how I look at it.
I agree with you. People would argue in the general public's defense that he does break the rules. I agree with you, though. I think he's an excellent race rider. He does sometimes walk a fine line. When you do that, sometimes you go over it unintentionally. It happens. It's inherent to the guys that play the game that way, whatever the game may be. But in this particular case, and I like to isolate and compartmentalize, issues and incidents like this. I don't think he crossed the line. I don't think it was as much as people made of it. And I think he rode a good race. He got the job done, and the horse ran really good. And again, by rule, okay, yeah, if the rule was a foul is a foul, you come down, then they would have been obligated to maybe look at it. Okay, but that's not the rule. The rule is, cost a shot at a better placing or cost of his position. And that didn't happen because Happy Race Saver run second. And I think, anybody could have seen that he was not going to win the race. I don't think that's subjective. I think if you have a good eye, that Happy Saver wasn't winning. So always a pleasure.
Yeah.
We got more coming. So go get ready for the sales, buy some good horses. And
We'll try. It's an expensive sale, it's but we'll see. I think it'll be interesting. I think there's
bring money. Bring money.
No, exactly. But the thing is, what I try and do with clients is I look at value for money. So this sale at Saratoga is always one where horses tend to be overpriced. If you want to hear my opinion, probably an unpopular opinion, but most of us on the bloodstock side know Saratoga is a pricey sale where most horses are overpriced when you buy them at this sale. So, however, I think there are some good horses. I've seen some audibles that are quite nice that might not have a lot of page that might be able to be bought at the right price. So there's horses here for everybody, I think. In years past, a lot of people didn't show up because they said, I'm not going to spend $500,000 on a horse I could buy for 200,000 at Keeneland in September. So I think it'll be a good sale. I think there's going to be a lot of interesting things that'll unfold here because there's a market that people brought up for every type of buyer.
Listen, here's my advice on the sale. All right. 1, bring the checkbook. Okay. Got to have that. 2, take an allergy pill if you have any allergy tendencies or anything like that, because you don't want to sneeze or like have to go like that on your nose at the wrong time. And one of those guys think you bought a horse for like $4 million that you didn't really want to bid on. Then you're going to have got an egg on your face when it comes, you know, sold when nobody outbids you. That can happen. I brought somebody to the sale once. I said, whatever you do, do not sneeze. Don't wipe your face. Because those spotters are good. You got to admit.
They're very sharp. They're very sharp.
Nothing, man. You go like this. Oh, we got it, you know? So, you know.
But we actually got a horse last year. This is funny. So we got a horse last year for $475 out of this auction. He's a very nice horse. He's just taking his time getting to the races. And I'm on a phone, which sometimes I don't like being on the phone bidding with somebody on the other line because the cadence, it's not always, I've got to stay on point with what the bid spotter's doing. And sometimes there's a lag on one end. So there was a lag and I bid 475 and then immediately it jumped back to me at 495. I'm like, and I could already tell the guy at 475 was waning. And I said, well, I said, do we hit it again? Do we hit it again? What do we do? And I was about to bid one more time to 5, but then they said sold. And I said, well, we lost the horse. It's too late. But what happened was it was a mistake. They made a mistake. The other person bid at 495 and then they gave it to us at 475. So yes, it does happen. These guys are sharp. They see you move when they already know you're on the horse. And it could be thought of as you bid on that horse. So I sit with my hands and I usually stand out back when I bid. I don't like sitting in the sales ring. That way I can't cross my legs and they think it's a bid or something.
Absolutely. Anyway, go find some nice horses. A pleasure. We'll be back with a lot more stuff during Saratoga and beyond.
Sounds good.
Ciao for now.
See ya.
Here with some exciting news. DRF Formulator, the gold standard in past performance information, is now free exclusively on DRF Bets. Join DRF Bets with the promo code WINNING. Get a $250 first deposit match bonus, a $10 free bet, and free Formulator already uploaded to your account. Access Formulator's premium features, including sortable trainer stats, race replays, personalized trip notes, and lots more. Free Formulator exclusively on DRF Bets.
Nobody does it better.